In 1969, Americans watched musical legends perform at Woodstock.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mike. It really is.
And astronauts land on the moon, all while the Vietnam War raged on. More than 58,000 American service members died in the Vietnam War, and 350,000 troops were injured. This Purple Heart Day, MOAA members who bravely answered the nation's call share their memories from battle.
I was assigned to the AmeriCal Division, ended up as in Delta Company, 4th of the 31st, 196th Light Infantry Brigade.
We had some very challenging missions. We did air resupply for a lot of the outposts, or a lot of smaller locations in Vietnam.
I enlisted in the Marine Corps to go to flight training in the Marine Aviation Cadet Program.
The men served in different parts of the country during the 1960s into 1971. Mortar attacks were constant. Packing up belongings of fallen comrades was a heartbreaking reality. Each of these men survived battles they know could have easily taken their lives. Marine Corps Captain Dave Echeverria was walking south one morning, making up for miscalculations that brought his company to the wrong zone. A few hours later, he was shot with wounds to his hip and hand.
Around noontime, as we were crossing this graveyard, Vietnamese graveyard, the first shots filled the air. The Viet Cong unit also had an old French 75 millimeter recoilless, which they fired at us repeatedly, and I was probably wounded maybe 20-25 minutes into the firefight. And so I really spent the next hour just kind of laying behind a Vietnamese grave, which graves were roughly mounded sand. And so I basically was hiding behind the sand until I got a medic came up and put a bandage on my hip and one on my wrist. And about a half hour or so later is when we got medevaced.
The bullet ricocheted off Echeverria's .45 and went into his hip. The surgeon cleaned the wound for bits of leather from his damaged holster, but the bullet was beyond reach.
The wound was pretty severe. I mean, where the bullet went in sideways, as I said, it tore a hole about maybe an inch and a quarter in diameter, and in fact, the bullet is still in my hip. It's been there for now over half a century.
Army Captain Dave Tannis was patrolling with his company when a mortar round landed near a sister company. He sprinted from his position to take control of the company, but he never made it.
As I was running across an open ridge to get to them, they were in a jungle. They started dropping mortar rounds in, and they had me bracketed, and I knew I was going to get hit. And the third mortar blew my legs off. My rifle, which I carry in my left hand, clattered away from me. And as I tried to get it, I realized I couldn't move. And then I looked at my legs and saw they were gone. Medic got to me within 30 seconds and tied me off and gave me a couple of shots of morphine, and I never lost consciousness.
At around 2 a.m., Captain Kevin Hine, a B-52 pilot for the Air Force, was abruptly woken up by a 122 millimeter explosion that struck the Saigon area chapel he and others were sleeping in. Hine tried to pull injured men to safety, but was wounded and bleeding from being thrown into a ditch.
I came around, I helped try and rescue 2 other people. Several men died that night. Helped get 1 or 2 guys out. And after that, somebody realized I was bleeding, and I didn't realize it at all. And at this point, I didn't know it, but I had a severe concussion and didn't know it. But they took me to the aid station, and the corpsmen or medics patched me up, pulled a lot of shrapnel out of my wounds, out of my limbs and back, legs and everything. I helped them. I got a pair of tweezers or tongs or whatever, and pulled out the shrapnel that was in my legs.
The Purple Heart means something different for each of the men.
It means I survived. It's not an award you want to get. You don't want to be a member of this club. All of us were wounded in combat somehow, some very badly. I wasn't wounded too bad. I probably was out of commission only about a day. It's very nice also to be recognized as a combat veteran and people say thanks, because during the Vietnam War, nobody said thanks.
See, one of the reasons I went to Vietnam was because I felt like a hypocrite, having been in Special Forces and not having been to Vietnam. I was in the reserves. I went back in the Army knowing I could get wounded, and I thought I could deal with that.
You know, everybody that's wounded in combat gets the Purple Heart. In my case, of course, thankfully, I survived. It wasn't awarded to me posthumously. You know, I had several friends who were killed in Vietnam and were awarded the Purple Heart, obviously, among other things. Thank God I survived the experience.